some of the people. See, it's interesting. The Mishnah jumps into, like we said on Friday, the Masechta, this Masechta is broken up into 3 sections. Section number 1 discusses witnesses that try to frame somebody. That's what section number 1 is discussing. And the Torah has laws regarding witnesses that frame somebody, and we're going to discuss some of that here today, and that's what the chapter focuses on. The Torah says the following. The Torah says if 2 people come and they testify, and then 2 other people come and they prove that the first pair of witnesses had no right to testify because they were not there at that spot. So what do? We believe the second pair of witnesses. Is that correct, Yaro? Now the question is, why is the second pair of witnesses believed? You have the first pair of witnesses said that they saw, let's say, Reuven kill Shimon. That's what the first pair of witnesses say. Comes the second pair of witnesses that say, you say Reuven killed Shimon on a certain date, in a certain town, a certain state. You with us on that day in a different town, in a different state. And based on the distance between our town and that town, it's impossible that you saw what you said. You were in Guadalupe, and there was COVID. There was no planes on that day. You with us in Guadalupe that day. So how can you say it happened in New York? So what does the Torah say? You believe the second pair of witnesses. So there's a famous question. Why is the second pair of witnesses believed more than the first pair of witnesses? The first pair of witnesses say this happened. We witnessed a certain thing. We witnessed Shimon is dead. We don't know who killed Shimon. And the first pair of witnesses say Reuven killed Shimon. They say it was Reuven did it. And the second pair of witnesses say, how could you say Reuven did it? How could you say that? How could you guys say you with us in a different place? Good morning, Daniel. How could you say that? So why is the second pair of witnesses of Daniel will bring up the question, why is the second pair of witnesses believed more than the first pair of witnesses? Good morning, Morris. The first pair of witnesses say Reuven killed Shimon in a certain town at a certain date. And then we have the second pair of witnesses come and say, how could you say that? You with us in a different town. So it comes out that the second pair of witnesses are saying that the first pair of witnesses could not have been there. But you weren't there. So but the first pair of witnesses say we were there. You guys, the second pair of witnesses, we weren't there. But we say we were there. So why is the second pair of witnesses believed more than the first pair of witnesses? That is the question on the table. If 2 people say Reuven borrowed $100 from Shimon, 2 people say Reuven paid Shimon. We were there. Reuven paid Shimon the $100. And 2 at this date, and the other 2 people say we were there. Reuven did not pay Shimon. They're contradictory witnesses. So we say one's not believed more than the other. So why is the second pair of witnesses believed? Why shouldn't it be in regular case of 2 witnesses going against 2 witnesses? That is the question on the table. Morris, right? Is that a good question? Daniel, you hear the question? So the Mefarshim explain the following. When two witnesses go against 2 witnesses, 2 witnesses testify to something, and the 2 other witnesses contradict the testimony, what the guy said. 2 witnesses say Reuven paid Shimon on that day. The other witness says Reuven did not pay Shimon. So then they're contradictory witnesses. 2 witnesses say Reuven killed Shimon, and 2 witnesses says that Levi killed Shimon. They're arguing with each other. Then they knock each other out. No one wins. There's no winner. It's called Edut HaChosha, contradictory witnesses. But here, the second pair of witnesses, if you heard what Rav Daniel said, he mentioned a point. The second pair of witnesses are saying whether it happened or didn't happen. The second pair of witnesses are not testifying about the facts of the case. The second pair of witnesses are only talking about the witnesses. They're not coming to talk about the facts of the case. They're coming to talk about the witnesses. So the same way, if the second pair of witnesses would come and say that the first pair of witnesses are Mechalel Shabbat, if they would come and say, good morning, Jaime, if they would say that the first pair of witnesses are Mechalel Shabbat, the second pair of witnesses would be believed, because they're saying testimony about the witnesses, about the integrity about the witnesses. They're not talking about the case, whether it happened or didn't happen. They're not arguing on the facts of the case. They're coming to say that we know that the first pair of witnesses were Mechalel Shabbat. A person who's Mechalel Shabbat is not a kosher witness. So the same way you would believe the second pair of witnesses, if they say the first pair of witnesses was Mechalel Shabbat, it's the same thing when they say the second pair of witnesses are dishonest. Because they're saying they were with us on that day. So therefore, that's why the Torah believes the second pair of witnesses. Because the second pair of witnesses are talking about the witnesses, not about the testimony. They're not arguing on the testimony, contradicting the testimony. They're talking about the integrity of the people. Okay, Beis Amud Aleph, first page in Maseches Makkos. We're going to go back, start again the beginning of the Mishnah. Ketzad ha'edim nasim. Jaime, you have it? Very good, excellent. Ketzad ha'edim nasim zomimim. How do edim become zomimim? Zomimim is a very bad thing. It's a very derogatory state to be zomimim. That means you were the framers. You tried to frame somebody. You made up a story. You are false witnesses. But not just false witnesses, but you're framers. How do Edom become these Zomimim, that the status of Zomimim, that we call them Zomimim, and the general law of Zomimim, the Torah says you do to those witnesses, Zomam. The word Zomimim is from the word Zomam. The Torah says what they wanted to do to the other people, you have to go ahead. You have to do to them what their testimony was trying to do to other people, what they intended, that they prepared to do to the other people. But the Mishnah opens up how Edom becomes Zomimim. How does that happen? And then the Mishnah takes it to turn. It tells us how they do not become Zomimim, how you do not do to them what they want to do to others. Look what the Mishnah says. Two people come and they testify about someone that he's a son of a divorcee. They say that this Cohen, two Kohanim come, Rashi learns the Gemara, let's say two Kohanim come, and they come and they say, this child that was born from this woman he is a son of a divorcee. His mother was divorced before his father married her. His mother was previously married. We were there. We were in the Beis Din, in the court. We saw his mother receive a bill of Jewish divorce called a get. We were there. And then subsequently, this woman remarried and had this baby boy. But who did she marry? She married a Cohen after she got divorced. Everybody knows she married a Cohen. There's no question about it. But nobody knew that she was previously married, that she was divorced. These witnesses come to the table and they say, by the way, she was in Mexico. We were in Mexico. You know, when she was in Mexico, we saw that she got a divorce. She got a bill of divorce. And therefore, this Cohen had no right to marry her. He's forbidden to marry a divorcee. And now this child is the son of a divorced woman. And the issue is, if a Cohen marries a divorcee, that she was previously married, the child is a halal. The child is invalid. It's not allowed to eat truma. So that's what these witnesses came to say about this child. And then, or uben chalutza, which we mentioned, ben chalutza, is that they said that this woman, not that they were there in Mexico when she received divorce, They were in Mexico when, you know what happened? Her husband had died. Her first husband had died. And her husband's brother did not want to do Yibum, marry her. So they did the process of Chalitza. And that's what happened. And she received, what's this process of Chalitza? The Torah says she removes the shoe from her husband's brother. If her husband's brother doesn't want to marry her, she removes the shoe, she spits in front of him. And this woman had that history that she once had Chalitza done to her. And the same way a Cohen can't marry a woman who was divorced, Cohen can't marry a woman who had something similar to divorce, which is Chalitza. That because Chalitza means she was tied to the husband's brother after her husband passed away, and something needed to be done to remove her, to permit her to marry anybody. And that was the process of Chalitza. So once a woman had that status, a Cohen can't marry her. The Rabbanon, most people say it's the rabbinic decree that a lady who had a Chalitza, who was tied to the husband's brother, is not able to marry a Kohen rabbinically. And these witnesses said that this child was a child of such a woman. And now, I want to share, I looked up yesterday, what's the reason why? There's many different reasons given. Why by Yavama, if a person lost, if a woman lost her husband and she had no children, why, if the husband's brother doesn't want to marry her, she removes his shoe? You see, everybody can understand why she spits in front of him. Some will explain. She spits in front of him is a sign of the heat of disgrace that he didn't want to rebuild his brother's home. Why? What's the idea of removing the shoe? Beautiful. He said maybe because he didn't step in. He was supposed to fill the shoes of his brother, and he didn't fill the shoes. That's Maris. Beautiful chidush. He didn't step in. He didn't fill the shoes of his brother, and that's why maybe she removes the shoe. I saw one of the Mefarshim say, because we know in Avelut, when a person's in mourning, they remove their shoes. If the brother would marry her, if the brother of the deceased would marry her, then her husband would live on. Through her, because the commentaries say that the children that are born through such a union, when her husband died, and since the marriage is taking place only because she's the deceased wife, so it comes out that the marriage and there's no need for any money that has to be given to her like a normal marriage. She just lives with her. The husband's brother lives with her. It's a continuation in a certain sense of the first marriage. Meaning the children that are born are connected to the deceased. So because they're connected to, because the whole marriage is only because of the deceased. And therefore on his chart in heaven, he gets some credit for pruvu. He gets credit for having children because this marriage took place as a result of him. So therefore he's still alive in a certain sense, if the brother would marry her. But if the brother says, I'm not marrying her, now it's like the brother is now dead. Now it's the real death of that brother. And now it's the real death of that brother. Now it's time to take off the shoes. How do you like that? I thought that was like an unbelievable shot. And Jaime, you heard that shot? I thought it was a beautiful shot, an idea of what represented the shoe.
Excellent.
I saw a different shot, is that the shoe represents the woman being dedicated to her husband's needs. And it's the idea is that he had the opportunity, that he was supposed to, he had the opportunity that she's ready to be his wife. She's ready to take off his shoes, but instead, and so to speak, that expression of being a dedicated wife, willing to help the husband in his needs, but instead the brother doesn't want to do that. So she shows, I'm ready to marry you. You have this opportunity and you don't. So now she spits in front of him, indicating, I don't have that respect for you that a wife would have for a husband. I would do it. I would take off your shoes. I would do what's necessary to serve, to help you, my husband. But now that you're not doing this, now I'm going to spit in front of you to show you I don't have that respect for you that I'm supposed to have. That was a different shot. Okay. The first part I found very, I really resonated a lot with this idea. Yes.
In no way stepping into the shoes.
So that's why Morris had a beautiful shot. Mr. Haber, you missed a big chiddush. Now I'll share with you. You're here now. Good morning, Mr. Haber. Morris says, what's the idea of taking off the shoe? The woman who, if the husband doesn't want to marry, if the brother of the deceased doesn't want to marry her, so, right, by the Yavama, the woman, the widow, takes off the shoe of her late husband's brother, and she removes the shoe. That's called chalitza. Why the removal of the shoe? Right? It's a very good question. Why the shoe? So Morris suggested because the brother, the deceased brother, was given the opportunity to fill the shoes of his brother, but removal of his shoe is showing he's not filling the shoes of his brother. That's what we're removing his shoes, showing that you didn't fill the shoes. You didn't fill the shoes. You had the opportunity to fill the shoes, and you didn't do it. And that's a disgraceful thing, that when a person has the opportunity to get up to the plate to fill someone else's shoes and doesn't. Okay. Cohen who marries a chalutza, the children are invalid. A chalalim, many say rabbinically chalalim, they're unfit. If a Cohen marries a woman, a Cohen can marry a widow, but this is one widow that a Cohen can't marry. Which widow can't the Cohen marry? A widow who chalitza was performed to her. A widow who had this act of chalitza, that her husband died and she had no children. Her husband died, she had children, she marries a Cohen, no problem. Husband died, had no children, and then the husband's brother did this act of chalitza to her, she can't marry a Cohen. And the reason is because when her husband dies without children, she's not free to marry anyone at that moment. She's tied to the husband's brother. It's called zikah. She's tied to the husband's brother. The only way she gets free is the husband's brother has to do something with her, either marry her or chalitza. So the fact that the husband's brother did a chalitza, that cut the bond, the connection, is similar to a get. It's similar to someone being married to a woman and has to free her through giving her a get. In the same way a Cohen can't marry a woman who had a get, who was divorced, so too the Rabbanan say that Cohen can't marry a woman who chalitza was done. Good morning, Ariel. Yes. So if the Zomim Kohanim, right, exactly. So now, the witnesses that came to frame what were Kohanim. So right, so you would have thought to do to the Kohanim, if the Kohanim were the ones, the witnesses that came were Mr. Cohen and another Cohen came to testify, and they were found to be framers, that they framed this guy, this child. So you would have thought, do to them what they wanted to do to this guy. Let them be invalid Kohanim. Let them be invalid, because that's what they wanted to invalidate this guy. Let's do it to him what he wanted to do to that guy. So that's what the Mishnah teaches us. No. When they frame a Kohen, and they framed him, and they claimed he was an invalid Kohen, we don't do to them what they wanted to do to him. And rather, they're going to get lashes. The witnesses in this secret will get lashes, Makkos. And we'll see why in the Gemara, why don't we invalidate this one? Why don't we do to them what they wanted to do to? Why is this an exception to the general rule? Stay tuned. Now, Ein Omrim Yaseh ben Rusha ben Chalutza Tachta. We don't say they become, these witnesses get the status of the person that they wanted to, the negative status that they wanted to cause to that person. Let's give them the negative status. Rather, what is their punishment? They get malkut. They get lashes. They get lashes for their false testimony, for their testimony which they had no right to say. Now here's another exception to the rule. We testify that someone is chayiv galut. We testify that someone is obligated to go into exile. And you know the laws of exile, the guy goes into exile, someone killed someone unintentionally. It wasn't 100% accident, but it wasn't 100% negligence. We'll see more about it. It was something in between. We still was an accident. The laws are that he goes into Galut, he goes into a city, he has to go to a city, special city of refuge, and he has to wait there until the Cohen Gadol dies. And now these two guys come to court and they say Reuven killed Shimon. Shimon was murdered. There's no question. Shimon is dead. The question is who was behind the murder, right? And two guys say that Reuven killed Shimon by accident. By accident, they were in the forest. Reuven was cutting wood in the forest, and something went flying and hit Shimon. That's how Shimon died. We find Shimon in the forest dead. We don't know who did it. So then two other witnesses come and say, and by the way, in the first witnesses, when witnesses come, they have to say the date, the day of the week, the approximate time of the day. Two other witnesses say, you guys, how could you claim that you were there in the forest and you saw Reuven was the one who killed Shimon? You were with us in a different town, a different country. Impossible for you to have been there. So you would think, so we should send the first pair of witnesses to exile. That's what they wanted to do to this guy, to Reuven. So the Mishnah, no, this also exception to the rule. We do not do to the witnesses what they wanted to do to the guy. Rather, we give the witnesses Makkos, lashes. That's the punishment, not the general punishment for framing somebody. What is the general punishment for witnesses to frame somebody? The general punishment, you do to them what they wanted to the other guy. But here is another exception to the general rule. And then again, the Gemara is going to ask the question, what's the source for this exception? That's what the Gemara says. They get lashes. So that's the halacha of the Mishnah. Now, the Gemara asks the following question. If you want to look at the Rashis, we finished the Mishnah. So look at the Rashi. Everyone see the Rashis on the right side? So the Mishnah opens up with the statement, how do witnesses become zomimim? Right? How do they become framers? You see the Rashi on the right side? Got it? So Rashi says, the Gemara mefaresh my kama. Rashi says the Gemara is going to explain what the Mishnah means, because there's an obvious question. The Mishnah opens up, how do witnesses become zomimim? And the general translation of that would mean, how do they become people who you do to them what they did to others? That's how you would generally say the general zomimim are that you do to them what they do to others. And yet the Mishnah goes and takes a turn and shows you don't do to them what they wanted to do. So therefore, Rashi is saying there's an obvious question on the language of the Mishnah. So Rashi says to relax. Relax. Don't worry. The Gemara is going to explain what this means. So Rashi is telling you, you need to know there's an obvious question here on the Mishnah. You know, there's a sefer called What's Bothering Rashi. Chumash, there's a sefer called What's Bothering. You go into a Judaic store, it's called What's Bothering Rashi. It's like a 5-volume set on the Chumash. What's bothering Rashi? Rashi makes a comment. Rashi doesn't, like Rabbi Fischel, Rabbi David Feinstein's son-in-law once said, when Rashi uses his ink, he's very careful about how he uses his ink. If he uses some ink, you have to know there's no such thing that he's writing something, he's telling you something. So therefore, Rashi is telling you, you got to ask this obvious question. What is the meaning of the language of the Mishnah? Rashi says, the Gemara will explain. Rashi can do that throughout this Mishnah. Yes, the Mishnah starts with a question, yeah, but it's a question, but the Gemara starts with a question, but if you look at the language of the Rashi, the headline, Rashi's headline is, Keitzad Eidna someone and says, you see the Chavav, the Chulu, means and etc. So Rashi's point is that the first line of the Mishnah and the second line, the question and the answer don't match. That's Rashi's question. So therefore, Rashi says, the Gemara will explain the next Rashi. Es ish ploni, we testify that someone, so Rashi, who is this man? Cohen. Rashi puts in the word Cohen, because when the Gemara, when the Mishnah says, we testify about someone that he's the son of a divorcee. If you testify about Reuven, who's the son of a divorcee, what ramifications? If he's a Yisrael, there's no. If he's a Levi, there's no ramifications to say someone's the son of a divorcee. Who cares? What's the halachic ramifications? The answer is we're talking not about a regular person, we're talking about a Kohen. And a Kohen, there's ramifications regarding Truma. So Rashi fills in the blank. Who was the Ish Ploni? Rashi says Kohen. We're talking about someone who's known as the Kohen in the community because we know his father's a Kohen, but we say that he was, but his father's this woman, that his mother was previously married. Then Rashi says, Shehu ben Gerusha. He was the son of a divorcee. How do you know he's the son of a divorcee? You come and you say he's the son of a divorcee. How do you know? So the answer, Rashi says, so they say that in front of us, the mother was divorced. He is unfit, and Rashi fits in the blank. So what? He's the son of a divorcee? So Rashi says, Huchalal. He is unfit. Upasul. He is unfit to kuhuna, to do avodah, to do service, to eat truma. So then Rashi says, next Rashi, Ein Omrim. We don't say, Im Huzmu. Rashi says, if they became found false, they were framers. Vehein Kohanim. And they are Kohanim. The witnesses are Kohanim. We don't say, Yaseh Zeh ben Gerusha v'chalutza. We don't say, due to the witnesses what they wanted to do. L'kayim bo kashez zomam. Meaning, we don't say that. So Rashi fills in the blank. You would have thought to say that. Why would you have thought to say it? Because the Torah says you do to the witnesses what they wanted to the other guy. So you would have thought you have a responsibility to follow the menu what the Torah said. You see how Rashi is so misbehaving. You see the beauty of every word of the Rashi. That's what you would have said. So therefore, Ella rather Sofekas Aboyim. They get lashes. And Rashi says Sofekas Aboyim. And the Gemara Mefaresh Taima, and the Gemara is going to explain what's the reason. Meaning, we need to understand why is something an exception to the rule? There's a rule. There's a general rule. The rule states you do to them what they want to do. So why not? So Rashi says, don't worry. The Gemara will explain. The last Rashi in the Mishnah, Shechayiv Galut. We testify that Reuven is Chayiv Galut. How you walk into court, you say this guy is obligated exile. Why is he obligated exile? So Rashi fills in the blank. Shehorag es a nefesh b'shogeg. He killed someone b'shogeg. He killed someone unintentionally, and that's why, because he killed someone b'shogeg, that's why he's obligated to go to exile. I saw yesterday, interesting thought. Why one of the Mefarshim, one of the Mefarshim say, why does the Torah give Malkut of 40? It's not 40, it means up to 40, it means 39. But what's the number? But the Torah uses the number 40 to indicate 39. And what's the idea of the number 40 is a very big number. We find in last week's parsha that Moshe Rabbeinu was in Har Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights. So this person who went ahead and violated the Torah that was given to Moshe in 40 days and 40 nights on Har Sinai, so that person gets the lashes of 40, so to speak. Meaning there's a connection between the 40. Why 40? Why should the Torah? Why is the Torah using the number 40 by lashes? What's the number? Meaning it's not an arbitrary number that the Torah picked 40. So one idea I saw is that the idea of 40 is connected to Har Sinai. And a person goes ahead, and I saw something else also on this. That a person goes ahead and he goes against the Torah by being a false witness by framing somebody going against the Torah that was given in 40 days, he should go ahead and what? Be punished, connect to this 40. I'll tell you who says this. The Ramban, Nachmanides says. And also, the Ramban also says another point. He says he violated the Torah that was given him 40 days, and he's causing punishment to himself that you were created in 40 days. What do you mean you're created? It takes 40 days for the fetus to develop, right? When a baby, like we saw in the Gemara in Brachot, that the first 40 days is where whether it's going to be a boy or a girl, it's developed in those 40 days. The first 40 days is called the Yesirat Avlad. It takes for the babies, a lot of the baby to form the basic of the babies in the first 40 days. So therefore, you cause this, you will cause trouble to yourself. You went ahead and you violated the Torah and you caused punishment to yourself. And you will remember, you were created in those 40 days. You were formed in those 40 days. So therefore, you deserve it. Therefore, Midah Keneged Midah, Hashem is going to punish the guy. These 40 lashes, which it's a number up to 40. Okay. The Gemara says, now the Gemara opens up with the question. The Gemara says, the Gemara asks, the Mishnah should have said how the witnesses do not become Zomim. How does the Mishnah open up? How do Edom become Zomim? The answer seems to answer a different question. The answer is answering how witnesses do not get what they want to do to someone else. What the case is that they don't get. So why does the Mishnah open up how they become Zomim? They should have said how they don't become Zomim. Question number 2 is, the details of witnesses becoming Zomim is taught in a later Mishnah. So why is our Mishnah asking the question, how do witnesses become Zomim, when we see the true details of that are going to be discussed later, and then later Mishnah? The Mishnah later on states the clear details of how witnesses become Zomimim. Aval Omru Lahem, the witnesses say to them, Heich atem me'idim. How could you testify that happened? Shaharei ba'oto hayom, that day that you claim, you witnessed a certain thing, that day you were somewhere else. Oto atem hayitem imanu, you were with us. The second pair of witnesses says, you were with us, b'makam ploni, in a different place, different location, total different place. Hari ilu zomim, that's zomim. So we see later on, the Mishnah later on explains to us zomimim. So what is the Mishnah here telling us how witnesses become Zomim? It's the Mishnah later on that gives the true answer to that question. So the Gemara says, Tana hatamkai. Our Mishnah is really a continuation in a certain sense of the previous tractate, the previous Masechta. What was the previous Masechta? Sanhedrin. Makkos follows Sanhedrin, as we mentioned on Friday. Why does Makkos follow Sanhedrin? Because when the laws of Makkos to give lashes is connected, it has to be done in a Sanhedrin. One of the things that a Sanhedrin does is give Makkos. I can't give Makkos. If I see someone, if 2 witnesses see someone do something wrong, they don't have the power to give the Makkos. 2 people see a guy eating not kosher and he was warned. We can't give the guy lashes. You have to bring him to the court. Sanhedrin says, so connected to Sanhedrin is Makkos. Therefore, that's one reason that the commentaries give why Makkot follows Sanhedrin, because it's something that needs to be done. Makkot means lashes or punishments, hitting, like Rasha Lama Sakar. Why are you hitting your friend? Maket. So that's the connection, and we're connecting to a specific learning, the Mishnah in the last in Masechta Sanhedrin in the last tractate. What did the Mishnah say? It said over there, Kol hazomamim makdim l'otam mitah. All zomamim, we give them the mitah, the death that they wanted to, the person that they were testifying against, they get that capital punishment that they wanted to cause to that person. Meaning, there are different types of capital punishment. There's stoning, there's strangulation, it's called chenek, there's drinking, there's a sword, there's cherev, and there's sreifa. Sreifa is they give hot lead to drink. Those are 4 different types. So what, depending on what the witnesses wanted to cause for the person they were framing, that would happen to them. Let's say they come and they say the guy was Mechal Shabbat. One of the strongest a person of Vali Shabbat gets the highest level of punishment, gets skila, the stoning punishment. And they go ahead and they testify that somebody is obligated stoning. They testify someone violated Shabbat. They testify the guy was warned and he knew about it and intentionally violated the warning and intentionally desecrated the Shabbat. So you give the witnesses that type of punishment if whatever they were claiming they wanted to say to that guy happens to the witnesses. But the Mishnah states there's an exception to the rule. Chutz mizomei bat Cohen bo'ala, except the ones that framed a woman who was a daughter of a Cohen. What's the law? A daughter of a Cohen, if she was married, and after she was married, she had Nisuin, 2 witnesses come and say that she had an affair with somebody. That's for sure. A married woman, but she's not only a married woman, she has another title. She's a daughter of a Cohen. And because she's a daughter of the Cohen, the desecration is even greater, and the Torah gives a higher level punishment. The type of punishment for that woman, the Bat Cohen, is to get the lead, the hot lead, sreifa. That's the punishment for a woman, a married woman, the daughter of a Cohen, if she had an affair with somebody else. Now, what do we do to the person who the witnesses say she had an affair with Reuven? Reuven has to forgive us using him as an example. If you had an affair with Reuven, so what do we do to Reuven? Reuven doesn't get the punishment of sreifa. Reuven gets the punishment of chenet, the strangulation he'll get killed through strangulation. That's Reuven's punishment. Then that's the normal case. But what happens if those witnesses who said that this daughter of a Cohen had an affair, if they were found out to be Zomerman? They were found out to be framers. Now, what do we do to them? Do we give them sreifa, because they wanted the woman to have sreifa, they want the woman to have the hot lead, or do we give them chenek, which they wanted the strangulation for the guy who supposedly had the affair? So that's what the Mishnah says over there. Even though they wanted to give her sreifa, they're going to get his punishment, the man who she allegedly had an affair with. And we'll continue tomorrow more details about this answer. Want to have a good day. Everyone should pray well. Thank you, everybody, for being on. And all the best ever. Thank you. Thank you, Jaime, for being on. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you all for coming. Yes, you too.